tuned in to The Andrew Lawton Show.
Wanted to bring in Kris Sims, our regular Monday maven. She is the Alberta director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation and joins us now. Kris, good to talk to you. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
You have not seen in any businesses around you, I suspect, except for maybe a company that started up in 2015, 2016, a rise of 42% in its staffing with no discernible reason why. The federal government has not scaled up its services. The federal government has not added a new service. The federal government has, if anything, just tried to maintain. But this increase, massively so.
Yes, big time. For folks who are already mad about this, sorry to add to it, but just picture yourself using the federal government service, whatever it happens to be. A passport office, for example. Think back to 2014 and then think to now. Is your service 42% better? Are you 42% faster and more efficient and friendly and on the ball and more accurate?
Did your passport come 42% more quickly?
Exactly. And so this is where things really get frustrating. And the folks at the CTF team there in Ottawa are the ones who dug up these numbers. So like you said, that is an addition of more than 108,000 full-time positions. To give you an idea, that's the entire population of Red Deer has been added to the government employee list. It is just an astonishing number of people. And you're right, a 42% increase. People could say, okay, well, they've got more demand, more people are coming into Canada, our population is increasing. Dude, that's only a 14% increase in population. So the Trudeau government should be answering these questions as to why are you bloating the ranks of government employee rosters? And keep in mind, it isn't just the numbers here. The numbers are a big factor. But it's also the fact that a lot of these federal government employees, especially in the Ottawa-Gatineau area, in the capital, as Franco likes to call it from Hunger Games, they're complaining about having to go into work, like to put on pants and go into the office and work instead of working from home. Now, lots of people do work from home, and that's totally fine, right? But the thing is that this all started during the lockdowns. This all started during, the measures that were taken by the federal government. And they're still hanging on to not having to go into the office and just kind of working from their phones. And so folks really need to pick up the phone and call their members of parliament on this.
Well, and so there's the raw numbers of this, which are concerning enough. And there's also, and I don't know how granular the details are right now, the question of what these jobs are and what people are getting paid. We know, generally speaking, that pay in the public sector is not proportionate or commensurate to what the private sector pay is. There have been various studies done on this, and, it's anywhere from 10 to like 30% more for the same job in the private sector on average. And then there's also the pension aspect of this as well. And that, a lot of the bureaucrats have access to pensions that their colleagues in the private sector don't have. So a massive increase like this is incredibly, incredibly harmful to the government's books.
Oh, big time. They're there pretty much permanently. The idea of actually getting fired from your job, even for wrongdoing as a federal government employee, is almost incomprehensible. So I spent a lot of time working in Ottawa, living in Ottawa. A lot of it was actually at News Talk Radio. I think I booked you there as a guest many times, their CFRA radio station. And so I got to know some of these federal government employees quite well, and those who cater to them, literally, some of the caterers who bring in their lunches. And it became a term called the golden handcuff. So it goes something like this. Oh, I've got this office job. I have this cubicle job. It's super boring. I water houseplants for most of the day and play Candy Crush on my phone, but I don't want to leave because, like you just pointed out, I have job security, big pension, all that great stuff, and I'm paid more than the average person. Now, I got to be clear. There are some people who work within the federal government employee ranks. I have met them who do work hard. They do a very good job. They're efficient. They do keep the things running on time as best as they possibly can. But there's so much extra, I call them office furniture. There's so much bloat. And that was even 10 years ago. I can't imagine what it's like inside the ranks of the public service, as they call it right now.
Yeah, it's always great. I end up in Ottawa a lot just for interviews and events and
Yep.
whatnot. And any literally without fail, every time I walk down Spark Street or Albert Street or whatever, some federal bureaucrat will like come up to me and they'll like say in a really low voice, "Hey, Andrew, I like your show. I like your show." And I'm like, "Why are you whispering?" They're like, "Well, you know."
They're
So they
watching.
are there, and I know there are many of you, and I am
I
not
know.
trying to take aim at you as individuals. It's about the institution as a whole. I mean, I wrote many years ago about how I worked at the LCBO, and I said, this is an absolute racket. But you know what? In university, I was happy to profit from that racket because it was an opportunity there. We need to have a government, I would say, doing far fewer things than most times, the government wants the government to be doing. But interestingly enough, I would just to point out the numbers here: 42% increase in the size of the bureaucracy, 14% increase in population. Now, that means that the tax base has not increased with the size of government. Now, GDP has increased, wealth and wages and whatever has increased, but that means that the onus of paying for that workforce falls on a smaller and smaller share of the population proportionally, which means higher taxes. Am I missing something?
No, you nailed it. And to further illustrate what exactly you just said, more bodies, right? More people, okay, usually means more revenue for government because they're paying income taxes in their salaries. They're starting businesses and paying business taxes. Alberta is a perfect example, okay? We've been having the biggest population boom here since the oil patch boom of the late 70s, early 80s, before the first Trudeau wrecked everything. So that was a huge population in migration, okay, is what they call it, a big population boom. Our government revenues have gone up. So it's kind of fascinating. This is why we try to argue lower taxes, okay? Lower your taxes, your income taxes, lower your business taxes, because it increases your population. More human beings move to your geographical area and start paying taxes, and almost always that winds up with more money actually in government coffers because you're attracting that sort of industrious person. And you're exactly right, Andrew. We're not having that here. We've seen a more than 40% increase in the ranks of government employees, but a 14% increase in our population. So the burden is much higher for us as the payers.
Now, on the other side of this, I will say everything is not completely sunshine and roses for federal bureaucrats. The government has historically had issues paying them. Now, there's a part of, those listening that may say, good, we'll save a few bucks. But at the end of the day, if people are working for the government, they should be able to get paid. And this has been, how many years have we been talking about the Phoenix pay? Like, this has been the story. The Phoenix is supposed to rise from the ashes, but I feel this one has just been smoldering for the last decade. We've learned that the federal payroll system launched in 2016 to save $70 million has actually cost $3.7 billion almost. This is insane.
Yeah, it's totally nuts. So I'm going to tell you a little story. So I was at Sun News Network from startup until shut down, and then after that, I was with the Veterans Affairs Minister for a brief period of time. So I've seen both sides of that rope in communications and journalism back and forth several times in my career. After I was with the Veterans Affairs Minister after 2015, I was back at 580 CFRA helping to host and produce a show. The big story that started percolating around 4 months after the election changeover there, Andrew, was the Phoenix pay system. Now, for folks who don't know what this is, very quickly, the Phoenix pay system is a software program that manages the payroll for the mass of bureaucracy. Okay, so it doesn't matter if you're out there trying to help save whales with scientists and the Coast Guard, okay, and you're paid by the federal government, or if you're a paper pusher in Ottawa somewhere, you're all paid under the Phoenix pay system. Now, this is how the story goes, okay? I think it was 2 or 3 separate times under Prime Minister Stephen Harper before 2015, they tried to implement this new form of software so that every 2 weeks or every month, however they get paid, bing, there's your money. It winds up in your bank account. But 3 separate times, the story goes, the senior bureaucrats warned the government, whoa, 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 there's a lot of bugs in this thing. Okay, we can't do this yet. Okay, so they didn't do it. They kept the old system and people kept on getting paid as normal. Chapter change, the Trudeau government comes in. The story goes, they said, whoa, we've been sitting on this for 3 years. Why isn't this thing ready yet? We're going to do it. Let's push the button. I don't know if those same bureaucrats warned the Trudeau government in the same way. I don't have that smoking gun. The rumor is that they did, okay? But they pushed the button anyway. So in some cases, Andrew, these bureaucrats, these federal employees would go months and months, and in some cases a year, without getting paid. So some of them had to leave their homes. They had to move back in with their parents. Some of them were also drastically overpaid. So they have this crazy amount of money coming into their bank account, and they're having to account for it and save every nickel of it. And they don't know how much they're allowed to spend. Like, it totally messed up their budgeting. Fast forward to now, that was a great piece by Jen Hodgson, by the way, in the Western Standard. Almost $4 billion has been wasted trying to fix this software program. Again, with a B, $4 billion so far on trying to fix and implement the Phoenix Pay system. To give you an idea, we could pay around 2,000 carpenters and 2,000 police officers full salary for 10 years. What we've spent on this.
Wow.
Yeah. It's
4
brutal.
CBCs.
I don't give them ideas.
I don't recommend spending it on that, but it's 3 CBCs, I guess.
3 and a bit, plus bonus.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
Kris Sims, Alberta Director from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Always a pleasure. We will talk to you next Monday.
You betcha.
Thanks for listening to The Andrew Lawton Show. Support the program by donating to True North at www.tnc.news.